Well, there you go, fellas, ladies. Nice to see you. Good to be here. My name is Dean, and we're back for another podcast brought to you by my friends at Field Trip Health, fieldtriphealth.ca. Go there today if you're suffering from any kind of post-traumatic stress, drug-resistant or treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, there are people that can tailor-make a treatment program for whatever psychopathy you have that you can't get over. And everybody knows depression, anxiety, PTSD is very common, and it'll stay with you for a long period of time, whether you've been on SSRIs for a long time and they don't work, whether you're struggling at work, whether you're struggling at home, whether you're struggling with addiction. Ketamine-assisted therapy is legal in Canada and has an 80% response rate. There's one name that I trust with my wellness when it comes to therapy and getting on top of trauma, and that belongs to my friends over at Field Trip Health. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca today for more details. Book your appointment online. There is someone standing by to talk to you, to listen to you, to help tailor make a program so you can work through your trauma, get better faster, relief within hours in a lot of cases, combining low dose ketamine with real therapy for a couple of hours. You got 8 sessions, 16 hours of therapy. It is changing and saving lives. Again, fieldtriphealth.ca. Book today, fieldtriphealth.ca. Well, last time I had this gentleman on the podcast, it was sort of a get to know you. And he literally just in the green room, I didn't know he was there, and he watched me pick my nose. He didn't want to talk about it. So that's our first topic. Please welcome back to the program, Mr. Pete Dominick. Pete, how are you today, dude? Nice to see you.
It's great. Great to be here. Sorry that I had to witness that travesty earlier. I'd like to move on and past it and pretend it never happened.
I know, and anytime you catch someone else doing that, it's always kind of a shocker, but we all do it, right? And I don't want to belabor the point. I don't want to be disgusting because you specifically told me before we came on this podcast, you're like, let's not talk about it. And I'm like, no problem. And so, me, it's the first thing I have to do.
No, listen, I understand. You never tell a person who goes on air, a comedian, what not to talk about, because we will immediately do that. I mean, I had so many gigs in my career, specifically at like colleges where I performed early in my stand-up career, where just before you go on stage, the student from the campus activities group that brought you there, be like, okay, so if you could just not do any jokes about sex or anything with swearing, that'd be great. I'm like, you're leaving me with my one bit that will kill here, which is just a cat barfing impression. That's all I've got. I've only got 9 minutes now, but so of course you go on and you break the rules right away. Don't tell us what not to say, because you're gonna say it.
Yeah. Well, that's why you were very effective in radio. That's why you're a stand-up comedian. But for me, it's like this impulse. Like if someone comes on my radio show or they come on the podcast and they say, hey, let's just stay away from this. It's like they might as well take a big spotlight and put it on that, because that's all I can think about. It's all I can see. It's like, please don't bring it. So I'm like,
I hear you, but now I'm backtracking on my own vehement argument that we're making here, which is true, because I had plenty of times in my career where I wasn't trying to be a gotcha journalist with this or that celebrity, especially. A publicist came in and was like, listen, dad just died. He doesn't want to talk about it. I'd be like, I don't need to talk about his dad dying. Or he's newly divorced, doesn't want to talk about it. I was never that guy trying to get attention, because then you ruin relationships with people anyway. But I mean, if you tell someone not to say certain types of things. I used to have a guy when I started out early in radio. I'd love to know what you think. When I first started in radio, my whole idea was to have a show where I interviewed experts, as opposed to a show where the host was the expert, because I always thought that was contrived and phony, and I didn't believe it. I didn't believe all these right-wing guys who dominated radio. There's like nobody in the left progressive radio that made any money or had any ratings. But all these guys on the right, they all knew everything about everything: foreign policy, taxes, economics, you name it. They were experts on climate science and everything. I thought, that's so ridiculous. How could you possibly listen and trust this person? So I started bringing on smart experts. That's what I do good. That's what I still do every day on my show. I find the smartest people I can talk to. I talked to Spencer Ackerman, Pulitzer Prize winning expert on terrorism and national security. Talked to him today. I learned a lot. That's what I do. But, the idea that I was going to say, this guy told me, don't say, I don't know. Don't ever say, I don't know, because that is failure. Dean, I was like, what? I don't know, though. I don't want to pretend that I know a thing that I don't. So it ended up being the appeal of my show. He's the guy who says he doesn't have the answers, but he brings on experts who do. It's still the appeal of my show. It's still why I don't make millions of dollars, because the guys with the biggest audiences are the guys who act like you need to listen to me for me. And
yeah, like you got the answers, right? Like you're the guy, you're the host, you're the most important person. And the best interviewer, to your point, is someone that has the ability to be able to make that person the star and be okay with it.
no, that
To your
you
point,
get the credit.
right?
I still get the credit.
Yeah, always.
When I have a smart guest on, no one's like, yeah, I shouldn't say no one, but someone told me this story years ago too when I was starting in radio. When Johnny Carson or Jay Leno on Tonight Show had Robin Williams on the show, the next day when everybody's talking about the Tonight Show, nobody's like, did you see Robin Williams on the Tonight Show? They would say, did you see the Tonight Show? Or did you see Jay last night? He had Robin Williams on. When I have a great guest on my show, people be like, I love your show. They don't say, I love this guest. Of course they do. Often they do. But the idea is, yes, what you just said, you get credit. You deserve credit for finding and doing good interviews with people who are far smarter than me in my case.
Isn't that why Johnny Carson was so successful, right? Johnny Carson's a very funny guy. He'd come out and do a few minutes monologue off the top. You do a little bit of golf swing, but he continually put those people on a pedestal. Like he continually put everybody.
The setup man is often funnier in many ways. That's how I saw myself my whole career. My whole thing was surround myself with people who were smarter and funnier than I was. My two producers, longtime producers at SiriusXM, hilarious. Both of them way funnier than me. I got all the credit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, any good radio host knows that. When did you start in radio, by the way? I want to go through a little bit of a career arc because I'm talking to Pete Dominick, host of Stand Up with Pete Dominick, fantastic podcast in the United States. Very centrist, very responsible, very, very fucking funny, by the way. Are you allowed to
Yeah, but I would identify as a guy who's pretty far on the left, but I'm also, I don't like saying labels because they mislead people. Policy-wise, like morally, I'm on the left. I have all kinds of views, but I don't think most people have my views, certainly not in my country. I want pragmatic. I have realistic goals. So I'm big on compromise and coming together with people and be like, we might not agree on this, but do we agree on that when it comes about healthcare or other ideas? Because I don't think we're ever going to become my leftist utopia. And so I'm very realistic about how we actually pass and support policy. I'm also a big free speech guy and so on. So I don't like the labels, but in terms of radio, I guess the answer to your question is the first radio I did was as a comedian. I'm the comedian in town. The local radio show has me on for a few minutes. We have fun. So I got to know radio as a guest, promoting my shows in different cities across the country. But then I got hired at SiriusXM to host a show on their comedy channel. Well, it was Sirius.
How long ago was that?
That was 2007, I think.
2007, and were you doing Colbert at that point, or did Colbert come after this? Same time. So what were you doing first?
First thing I did was stand up. Then I got into audience warm up. Got hired at the Daily Show. Yeah. Jon Stewart hired me at the Daily Show. Then Stephen Colbert hired me at the Colbert Report. I did often nights. I did both the Daily Show and the Colbert Report, which is one of my favorite claims to fame. I would run from one studio, because they were close enough to run. You couldn't get a cab, and they taped close enough. When I get out of the Daily Show, I'd run over. I'd be out of breath and run on stage at the Colbert Report in front of that studio audience. It was amazing for money too. And then I got hired at Sirius, who was then Sirius. We merged with SiriusXM, and then I basically weaseled my way into hosting a talk show, because I was hosting a 1-hour daily show on the Comedy Channel, talking to comedians and playing comedy clips like a comedy DJ, because they had a whole channel dedicated to stand-up. It was a stand-up. They wanted a stand-up to host, and I agreed to do it.
So, but let's backtrack. So you do some Sirius XM. You're the warm-up guy for Colbert and for the Daily Show for Jon Stewart. Real quick before we get into some fun shit, I want to know, like, how do you get a job being a warm-up guy, and what is it like being a warm-up guy? Like, take me through what that is. I need to understand it.
A television show that has a studio audience almost always has a stand-up comedian that comes in and
kind of lube people up a little bit before,
and there's a range of different techniques and styles out there. And I was more of a stand-up who did crowd work and just made the audience laugh and entertainment, than have necessarily a whole bunch of bits planned and so on. So it's a lot of, who are you, where you're from, and so on. But to be clear, I had to do a whole bunch of very shitty gigs on TV shows whose audiences were made up of people who were like prisoners being paid or, people that certainly didn't have plans to be in that audience on the weekend, and they, somebody gave them a flyer and they came by, to, people who didn't have homes. I remember asking one guy, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Outside." I go, "What brings you in here?" They told me they would give me a slice. And that I'm supposed to make that guy laugh, or inmates. So there were a lot of shows.
Wait a second. What do you mean? Like they would fill seats with inmates? They'd call the local penitentiary and go, "Listen,
In a lot of Los Angeles-based sitcoms, they brought in people who were on parole and so on, just people that weren't there to laugh. They were impossible audiences to entertain, make laugh, because they weren't.
They were out on a day pass, right? So it's not like they're super into it. They're like, "Hey, this gets me out of commissary. I might not have to shower with 12 guys. This is good."
Never, as a performer, you never want someone in the audience who doesn't want to be there, because they got their arms crossed, whether it's music or even worse, comedy. So those were the hardest. So I really paid my dues and worked my way up. I did all kinds of shows you've never heard of, and some that you have, to get to the pinnacle, which was late night comedy. A comedian wants to do late night comedy because the audience is there to laugh, as opposed to, the Ricky Lake show or Jerry Springer, or a lot of those shows where they had stand-up comedians there doing warm-up. But for me, specifically, as a progressive guy and, being a huge fan of Jon Stewart, to get hired there by Jon, after auditioning against a bunch of other comedians who went on to huge things, I got the gig, and it was the best because those audiences were really smart and diverse, and they didn't they wanted highbrow comedy. So they made me a better comedian doing warm up for The Daily Show and Colbert. And I also did last week tonight with John Oliver on HBO for 3 years. I did, Colbert show.
He's brilliant too, John. John is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. I didn't know that you did John Oliver. You've done all the big ones. Like let me kind of go through roll call. What's Jon Stewart like? Is he as legendarily cool as he looks like he is?
Yeah, John's real down to earth. I think it's your experience, I mean, like, you get treated in different ways by different people. And I think John had a really good reputation. I never heard anything that he'd done, any kind of harassment or any kind of, he'd get upset like anybody else. I never saw it. I was only there for 20 minutes a night, but he treated me really well, better than everybody else that I ever worked for, because he was a stand-up comedian and because he came up the exact same way I did. The New York City comedy clubs, road gigs, and colleges. Like, he had nothing but respect for me and other comedians, and still does. Colbert was different in that he was never a stand-up, but he was the funniest person I ever met in my life. But he would say things like, "I could never do what you do, and I know this is a thankless job, so thank you." And he was always cool to me. But we didn't talk much, either. I mean, I didn't really have a lot of interaction with these guys. John more because he was a stand-up. You'd see him out sometimes, whatever, but not Colbert. And John Oliver, I only met once, and never when I worked there, because I would go out and do warm up and leave. Which I think is kind of shitty that I never ever taught to him, or that, more importantly, he never taught to me, because I always thought doing those gigs that the host should be really respectful and kind to me, because I was their opening act and audience warm up act. And I certainly was to guys who did that for me. But the nicest people to me were Joan Rivers and a great legendary comedian who we lost way too early, Greg Giraldo. I did warm up for both Joan Rivers and Greg Giraldo, and they treated me with more respect than anybody, gave me other gigs, helped me with my career, gave me money. Really, really kind.
Really, Joan Rivers. I've heard legendary stories about Joan Rivers that are positive and negative, but it's funny because you just pulled that name out of the hat. Haven't talked about or thought about Joan Rivers for quite some time, but really nice to hear like a posthumous story about her being so incredible, right?
Yeah, my experience with her was brief, but she gave me a lot of respect, eye contact, made me feel like, she respected me, like I was the only person in the room when she was talking to me. And I just have one quick story about opening for her in Atlantic City. I go out, 1,200 people there. They're all there to see Joan Rivers. And that's the other thing about being an opening act or the warm-up act. You're there, you're in the way of the guy, or in this case, legendary woman they paid to see.
You're the appetizer. Yeah.
Right. And I did a George Bush's stupid joke. That's how long ago it was, of course. And it was post 9/11, but it was George Bush's stupid. It was a hacky George Bush's stupid. And they booed me and groaned at me. And I just remember, because Joan Rivers was off in the wings, she was the only person who laughed. Imagine performing in front of 1,200 people, no laughs, but one of the most legendary laughs of all, the legendary cackle of Joan Rivers. And to me, it was what kept me going. She was showing me respect as a comic, that, it's a good joke, but they don't like you because they don't like your politics. It wasn't a great joke, but, it wasn't that deeply offensive. And then, of course, she goes out and she can get away with anything. And then she did the most offensive joke I've ever heard any comedian ever do. And it kills Dean. It just tears the house down. And the joke was about 9/11, that she had a different perspective than most people when she saw people diving to their death. All she could think was, competition, because she was a legendary widow. And so all these men in the construction of the joke were killing themselves, and now there would be more widowed women. And all she could think of was that there would be more competition for her as a widow. It was a brilliant joke about being a widow and being honest about, like, in the most awful of moments of what you see. And now we have a president of the United States who felt the same way when he said on 9/11, his building will now be the biggest.
Yeah.
He wasn't making a joke, to be clear.
No, he's void of a sense of humor. I've never even seen the guy smile. And let's combine those two topics. I find it fascinating too right now, because you talk about Jon Stewart, Colbert, John Oliver. They've really replaced a lot of news outlets, right? I read something the other day that said 30% of people under the age of 40 get their news from John Oliver and Stephen Colbert, and Jon Stewart. Is that because everybody's been segmented? Like, explain that to me if you can, because I get it. I mean, I get the responsibility, I get the humor, I get the entertainment, I get all that stuff combined with a responsible social message. But what a weird time to be in, where you've got these really three stand-up comedians that are carrying most of the water for the progressive left when it comes to getting your news and affirmation and information, right?
Yeah, I think I've thought a lot about this. I've been interviewed by scholars on this issue, because there's academic studies on, what we find funny and who, what motivates us and why we are attracted to the types of media that we're attracted to. The simplest way to say it is that the right wing, more conservative brain is more likely to be attracted to a show that, kind of is from an angry host scaring them with all kinds of things that are going to happen. And progressive hosts are less likely to do that, at least back in the day. Now everybody's, kind of doing that because everybody's legitimately scared about all kinds of things. But I think that the reason comedians were the only people that were able to deliver information, much less comedy or content, to progressives, is because progressive-minded people were not entertained by that kind of right-wing media, found it offensive or boring or whatever. But we want our news delivered in a more humorous way, if at all. And so if you want to fight apathy, it's why I started my radio show after working on Jon Stewart on the Daily Show and the Colbert Report. I saw that audiences learned from these guys, but the reason they learned is because the only reason they would stay watching or listening is because they were entertained. So it became this infotainment idea. And so I've worked very hard my whole career at trying to focus on some of the most boring issues, like trade policy and tax policy, economics, by getting great guests who had a sense of humor, who could explain things, constitutional law. A lot of people, their eyes and ears glaze over, but I've prided myself in getting guests to explain those things, talk down to me, self-deprecating during the whole interview myself. And I just think that's how a lot of people take in information that's boring, but super important, more important than anything else that they're watching. Real important stuff about immigration and all of these other issues delivered in an entertaining way is the way to reach progressive-minded people. And, John Oliver now is doing deep journalism with his 30 minutes a week on one issue almost every week. And it's really important. I highly recommend people watch it.
Yeah, John does a great job. He obviously smatters a ton of humor in there, but he's very biting, to your point, incredibly concise in 30 minutes, and how fast he moves. John has been tremendous. The fact that he's back is awesome. Colbert just continues to run that train, but to your point, packaging up really difficult conversations and things that are really people are fatigued by, right? Everybody's got Trump fatigue. Everybody's tired of it. Within some kind of entertaining sort of gift package that you can give people, it's kind of the magic sauce, to your point. That's why, the alt-right has to go and buy everything, as opposed to creating a brand where people can actually consume the information. I want to ask you a question though. Did you watch the I don't know if the joint address or the State of the Union. I don't know what the fuck you call that. Trump's 73-minute grievance last night. I can't wait to watch today.
I thought it was 90 minutes. I think
73 apparently. Maybe was it more than that?
I watched excerpts. I post my show now at about 5, 6 a.m. So I usually get up at like 4 a.m. So I try to go to bed around 9. So he started talking late and then talked forever, of course. So I watched excerpts. I read a lot of it. And I read a lot about it. So, I think, I have a lot of thoughts, obviously, about it, about the Democrats' reaction to it. It's just they're not.
I couldn't watch it.
No one told the Democrats that if they hold up their stupid signs of disapproval, that the entire internet would meme them and put words on them that they weren't holding up. Like everybody in public should know, never hold up a sign and get taken a picture of it, because the sign, I did that once and everybody just said, wrote whatever they wanted on my sign. Mostly it was, I have a small dick. And so I'm holding a sign that just says I have a small dick, and I could have just showed them and proven it. But the point is, never hold up a sign. So, just my first criticism would be that Democrats aren't playing the same game. There's not a sense of urgency. I like that this guy, Al Green, stood up and protested and got thrown out. I think that's what they should have done. I think they should have protested the president's speech and made it hard for him to speak and thrown him off and keep one after another screaming at the man. And that would have hurt their brand probably a little bit, but we're in a really high stakes moment to moment, day-to-day situation. So of course that's my criticism of the Democrats, but yeah, we can talk forever about the horror show, the awfulness, the lack of just maturity, just a lack of maturity that this man has. And, he called Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas in a speech. He calls the Prime Minister of Canada, your Prime Minister, the governor. Now J.D. Vance and others have referred to him, I believe, as Governor Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. It is so terrible, so not funny, so dangerous, so inefficient, counterproductive, real stupid. But they get off on it, and cruelty is the point. And that's what we saw a lot of last night. Cruelty is the point. They made a token of a young person with cancer, and then they are criticizing Democrats for not standing up for that. It's terrible to tokenize a person no matter what. But God, what a horrible thing to do, to have a child with cancer come to the State of the Union while you're cutting research for cancer, research that the world depends on, not just the U.S. So it's like they just used a cancer kid while they're cutting research for cancer. And, actions matter a lot more than words, including with Trump and Republicans. So I try to stay focused on actual policy rather than politics.
Yeah. Difficult to do because they love to muddy the waters with that stuff. They tokenize everything and everybody, whether it's a black person in the crowd, whether it's a kid with cancer, it doesn't matter. Apparently they brought a hostage over from Israel for the same purposes as well. Again, I didn't watch it because I couldn't watch it, and not because I didn't want to. It's just like, I cannot sit through, and they counted, Daniel Dale counted something like 234 lies, something like that. I can't remember what it was. And some he repeated multiple times. I just can't sit through that without people saying something. I'm at that age where it's like, you hear someone tell somebody a story that is completely invalid. You hear someone get gaslit, and it's like, I don't know if I got gaslighting PTSD at this point, but because of the contentious nature of the relationship that Canada now has with Trump's MAGA America, and because of how up to fucking here I am with his annexation talk and double speak and the fucking tariffs that came in yesterday, I legitimately couldn't watch it. I watched like the second episode of season 2 of 1923 last night, and then I fell asleep because it was like, why the fuck would I even bother? All this guy is going to do is be indecent to individuals. Check. He did exactly that. All he's going to do is make comments about how great he is in his political comeback. Check. He did that as well. All he's going to do is threaten to annex countries that are sovereign. Greenland. Check. Basically said, hey, we're just going to take it over. Folks, get ready. Make some stupid comment about Canada, and then tell everybody how great Elon Musk is. There was zero reference to healthcare, zero reference to the protection of the nation, zero reference to Russia, zero reference to peace in Ukraine, with the exception of the letter that Vladimir Zelensky sent him, which he read live like he was, doing some kind of look at me, I fucking won kind of strut, right? And so, and I knew that would happen, not to that extent, but I knew that would happen. And I'm watching clips this morning and I'm like, man, if I'm American, I get no comfort from anything that guy says, like zero. It was just gaslighting, self-promotion, and legitimate division and meanness for well over an hour. That's it.
And I think the one thing you didn't mention, that was a really robust recap, was the lies. The dishonesty is still hard to take because it misinforms people. He said last night this line that they cut research, they defunded research into mice, that they were researching about sexual issues. Can they transition or something? It was never the case. The research was transgenic mutations. It's the Genome Project. It's the kind of research that cures horrible diseases and treats and saves lives. But he just used the word trans. And so, it's not just that he lies, it's that he misinforms people, and it really, animates people. He's doing the same thing with USAID. What they do, and it really does take your breath away. The audacity takes your breath away. I see it locally, which I talked to you last time, and I see it on the national stage and everywhere else. What they do is they make the victim the aggressor. Ukraine is the aggressor. Trans kids are the aggressor. Black folks are the aggressor. No, these are victims. Victims of abuse are to blame. It was your fault if you were abused. And so that's what he continues to do. And I feel like not enough has been talked about or covered, because everything is flooding the zone and moving so fast, about the amazing work that USAID or USAID does around the world. And there was reporting that said that there were subscriptions to different news magazines from USAID, like that Politico. And basically he said Politico was funded by USAID, that Democrats, it was a slush fund for Democratic causes. USAID, maybe there were some things that everything is taken out of context. The reporting isn't good enough. There's a pretty logical explanation, because much to people don't realize about government waste. It's hard to waste money. You have to get approval upon approval upon approval before you spend government money. It's not that easy. And often people just demagogue, for example, in America, there was forever a myth that the Department of Defense paid like $700 for a hammer, when in fact, a lot of times Department of Defense would hide top secret spending by just putting line items like $700 for a hammer, when in fact it was $700 that they had to give a source, or $700 that went to technology for a stealth bomber, whatever it was. But you can easily demagogue spending, and that's what they've done, to the detriment of foreign aid that literally cures diseases, Dean. And finally, people don't understand how things work. They don't take a moment to think about it, to read about it. But the bottom line is, when America spends millions of dollars to stop Ebola in Africa, you could make a very easy argument that we are doing that in our own interest, because when an Ebola case shows up in America, and it has, I know a guy who treated Ebola victims in Africa, a doctor, my friend Craig Spencer, came back with it. And they had to quarantine the entire, everywhere. That ain't COVID. That's like bleeding from the eyes. You're definitely going to die disease. Craig survived, but just barely. The point being, we have to spend millions and millions of dollars in America to prevent and to treat Ebola if it ever makes it here. So it makes far better sense to spend far less to treat it there. And that's the case with vaccines. That's the case with hunger. We are actually investing in America when we spend money there, and it creates goodwill. And nothing could be better than feeding malnourished kids in a box wrapped in red, white, and blue than sending them bombs.
Dude, great rant, dude. You encapsulated that really, really well. And it's funny because all of that is interference, and the claiming of fraud, claiming of saving trillions of dollars, all been debunked, and you only need to wait a couple days, right? Which is fascinating, because
nobody gets to. There's no waiting. You hear the story, you never hear the debunked. You don't wait a couple days. Me and you do, and journalists do, and people that want to get to the truth do. But once you hear the lie that made it around the world faster than the truth can get its shoes on, you don't then hear the correction. Or even back in the day, if you read something on Washington Post, New York Times that had editors, and they printed a correction the next day, maybe you didn't see the correction. That's why you got to get it right the first time. But they're not even trying. They're trying to lie. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, but do you remember back in the day, you and I are roughly the same vintage, where if you got caught, you got caught? Right, you know what I mean? You told
Oh,
a
yeah.
lie or something happened or someone published a receipt of something that was untrue when you told an untruth. Used to be able to walk this kind of crazy line. And we used to like, Gary Rice, it comes to mind. Do you remember Gary Rice? Gary Rice ran for president. He had an affair. There's a picture of him on a boat and he was
Very
like
hard.
Gary Hart, pardon me, Gary Hart, picture of him on a boat with maybe Donna Rice. I think that might have
That's
been.
how
I think I got him.
you combine the name of the man
My
who
bad.
committed with the woman he committed it with, and if
Yeah.
they had a kid, you would have been right. They would have
Yeah.
named it Gary Rice. But yeah, Gary Hart with Donna
Yeah.
Rice, and yeah, I
Yeah.
recently heard or read a story about that and the truth of it all, and yeah, that was. Go ahead with your point.
Well, no, my point is that when you got caught, you got caught. Like that used to be the thing, right? And the amazing part is that you can continue to catch these guys in lies. Like you can continue to debunk all the USAID stuff. You can continue to talk about Doge not saving anybody and just committing massive fraud, probably inserting Russian code into mainframes that they shouldn't be doing. You can continue to out these, but they continue to tell the same lie. And I go back to the same point. And I got two examples: the Canada tariff fentanyl bullshit, and of course, Zelensky's visit to the Oval Office, right? Zelensky comes to the Oval Office. He sits down and he tries to correct the record in the middle of the Oval Office on national television. And not only do these two jackoffs continue to lie about the nature of what goes on in Ukraine, lying about him not wanting peace, lying about where the money went, lie, which is easily debunked. It causes an international incident to the point, like those lies cause an international incident to the point where the European Union stepped up with $800 billion for Ukraine and the rest of Europe because of those lies, because they thought, that's it, Donald Trump's gone. And he's still not quite gone, even though he's gone. Stepped up to change the face of NATO within 24 to 48 hours because these two jackoffs can't stop lying, specifically him, even though you can easily debunk it. Same thing with the fentanyl issue. He's been screaming about fentanyl.
The thing that's really hard about all of this, I find, is I've been covering politics and arguing with people about politics because I hosted a live call-in show, as you know, for years. So people would call in, we would argue. But, it's hard to argue with someone when you have no idea what they're talking about. And you probably shouldn't, but you have to react somehow. And I feel like one of the most recent examples was in the last 48 hours, you heard Trump say that Canada doesn't allow American banks there. And I bet you Pierre Trudeau had to go to Chrystia Freeland and be like, is that right? Like, don't we, maybe he knew about American banks there. Probably he did, the leaders and almost anybody, in leadership.
Can I fill you in?
But
can I fill you in? 16 banks from the United States currently operating in Canada, the tune of $113 billion in assets.
That's
today.
My point is, You're like, wait, why is I have to defend against, I wasn't prepared to have to defend against this argument. We're not arguing about, we're not on the same place. You're just making something up. I mean, I've been there so many times now, Dean, again, at the Board of Education, the main activists in our town. This is a very effective thing to do. I mean, progressives can't do it and they won't do it morally, but we couldn't do it because the people who read and support us wouldn't believe us. They just wouldn't believe us. If I lied about right-wingers, doing something in our schools, they would be like, I don't know about that. Let me look into that before I follow this guy. Like, my whole credibility is based on not being caught lying. It's how I make a living. And so the idea that you're supposed to respond or react to a lie in real time, you're caught flat-footed. What do? This isn't true that American banks don't. Why are you saying this? The fentanyl issue. Like, Trudeau and Canadians can't negotiate because they're not talking about, they're not living on the same earth. It's not happening. How can we stop a thing that's not happening? Tell us how to stop a thing that's not happening. We will do it, but it's not happening. You're just making it up. That's very hard.
Do you know how hard it's been for Canadians to stop fentanyl going across the border into the United States when no fentanyl crosses the border into the United States? You know how hard that's been? Do you know how hard it's been for people, like, just to explain it to people? And the rhetoric continues, and it's so bad that you have political parties up here that are and newspaper outlets and journalists and media outlets that are going, I don't know why Justin Trudeau isn't just doing whatever Donald Trump says we should do. Well, the reason why is because what he's asking us to do is a fucking lie, and it's bullshit, and it's predicated on literally a myth, like a myth that illegals are streaming across the border. And I'll give you a couple of stats. 99% of the fentanyl that comes into the United States comes in from other countries, not Canada.
And by the
99%.
way, there's a huge percentage of that comes in through airplanes. So a huge percentage of drugs, fentanyl specifically, comes in through airplanes, not guys carrying it across the border. So if you want to stop it, you got to do something about all the fentanyl on the airplanes. Sorry, more stats.
But he can't. No, I'm glad, but we can't. You can't do that. Like the problem is that we're always chasing our tail, saying no, that's not the case. Here's the stat. Almost like you got to cut and paste ready for every conversation where you have to know. Here's the statistic. And the fucking amazing part to me is you can literally put that receipt in front of people on social media, on Twitter, Substack, and you can put it in front of people, and they'll go fake news, which is like, okay, you know what? At that point, the argument's done, and you can't even fucking follow up the conversation. But he's willing to tank your economy over that big lie, right? He's willing to destroy workers' rights. He's willing to fucking make people pay $10 for eggs based on those lies, right? And that's the thing that I would have a hard time with if I was an American. I'd be sitting here going, okay, I am so confused. At least someone give me the information. You go and get the information from someone like me or like you, who's like, okay, no, that's not the case. We've researched it, or here's a guest and we've commented on it. This is a fact. There's no fentanyl coming across the border. Zelensky is not a dictator. He did not start that war. All the things. There is no fraud with U.S. aid. All the things that we're talking about. And you can literally put that in front of him. Every single daily can publish it. And he'll get up on the stump and captain every one of his capos to go out there and go, it's still about fentanyl for us.
Yeah, no,
it's still about this. And at that point, you give up. You're not even flat-footed. You're like, what the fuck?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to when it comes to giving up. I mean, when it comes to social media, I generally engage with the right-wingers in my town, on my town Facebook page, and there should be a lot more journalism just covering what happens on people's local town Facebook pages. But you know, these are my neighbors. These are people in my community, people, some of which I know, most of which know me because I'm on TV and radio, and because, you know, they've come to my comedy shows over the years, and because I speak out, mostly because I speak out at the board meeting. So I've made quite a bit of a name for myself there. But, you know, I'm less likely to argue with people, to try to go back and forth these days with them than just post things and get their, you know, what I'm doing now is just posting alternative sources of news to them, not to me, because they're so stuck in their silo. I'm like, maybe you haven't seen this. And then I don't engage them. They all want to argue, but no thanks. They all call me names, and I usually just, you know, fire back with calling them a silly goose and LOL. And, you know, they say you have TDS, which is Trump derangement syndrome, which of course really is a thing that I describe as people who are in a cult, and they can't see anything their leader does as being bad or wrong or lying. That's the derangement. They're mentally ill. I don't think the rest of us, regardless of your politics, see people in our lives, in our workplaces, or politicians, and allow them to do and say whatever they want, assault women, you know, all of it. So, you know, I think that's how I'm engaging these days, a little bit differently. But, you know, I got to ask you, because it seems like, and we talked about this before, Canadians are unified across the political spectrum. But there is one Canadian who could do a whole hell of a lot more, and he might be the most famous Canadian living. It's Wayne Gretzky, who I learned from your great Substack, which everybody should subscribe to. I didn't know what his politics were, and I thought he was like friendly with Trump because Trump's friendly with a lot of celebrities. Maybe he was on The Apprentice. I didn't think so. But then I read that he apparently went to the inauguration and is really legitimately been a longtime friend of Trump. And I don't know, I always thought Wayne Gretzky was like a married man who was faithful to his wife and a well-respected athlete and leader. And I didn't know any of his politics, but you have a great piece explaining about Wayne Gretzky's silence, which I think is disgraceful right now, really disgraceful, because he should be weighing in on this, especially since he was implicated by Trump in a long diatribe that Trump posted, putting the pressure on Gretzky to say something. Gretzky's left his wife to say something. It's cowardice, it seems.
Yeah. You bring up a really painful aspect of what's going on right now, because I, along with most Canadians, and I grew up in Alberta, not far from Edmonton, when the Oilers were on the run. They had a dynasty. Wayne Gretzky was a revelation. He was the best hockey player I've ever seen, anybody's ever seen. 50 goals in 39 games, 215 points in a single season, 92 goals in one season, 62 NHL records by the time he was done. Like, I was a Gretzky fan.
He was sexually assaulting any women throughout his career?
No,
Never. He treated people well. Kids who came up to him and wanted, like, he treated people well.
Very well, very well, which is the outlier for me. And I've got a personal story about this. So I grew up being a Gretzky file. I don't want to tell you how much money I've wasted or invested in, game worn Gretzky memorabilia from Nagano in Japan, from his days as an Oiler, days as a Ranger. I've got game pucks, I've got gloves, I've got it all. So you're talking to a P1, as they say in the business. Like I'm a fucking fan. So several years ago, I get a call from a mutual friend of Wayne Gretzky's and mine. His name's James, and he worked at a bank. And he's like, Dean, I've got the box tonight. Wayne's in town in the suite with us at the Leaf game. Would love for you to come and join us. I'm having like early dinner with my family, and I put my knife and fork down. I looked at my kids, and I'm like, see you later.
Archer ran through a wall like the Kool-Aid man. Just dust and smoke and booger.
Yeah. I'm out of here. So I make my way down to then the Air Canada Center, now Scotiabank Center. And I walk in and I give them my ticket on my phone and they buzz me up. I go to the suite and I'm buzzing. Like I'm shaking, right? I'm going to meet my fucking hero. He was my sports hero from the age of the 3rd grade until I was 43 years old. This is when I met the guy. I walk in and he's the first guy I see. And he's beaming face to face, like ear to ear. And he's like, you must be Dean. And I go, oh my God, you know my name. And he shook my hand and he goes, really nice to meet you. I heard you were coming. You're a big fan. I got to go do hockey night in Canada with Don Cherry and Ron McLean. I'll be right back. And he, true to his word, goes down, does a TV hit, comes back up, walks up to me, goes, sorry, I had to go do that. It's really nice to meet you. For the next 2 periods, right? He entertains me. He tells me story after story and talks about people that he played with that he loved and it doesn't like it when bad things happen to bad people. Talked about Ace Bailey, talked about Dave Semenko. He talked about Yaroslav. The stories this guy told, and I'm glued. Sure. And we're drinking. And he's got probably 16 in him. I've got at least 10 to 15. And then we take off and we go to the hotel bar and we hang out most of the night. He goes up to his room, gives me a hug, says, that was a great night. Thank you so much. I'm like, dude, and I got tears in my eyes. I go, this is a dream come true. This is incredible.
Okay, fast forward. You have sex with Wayne Gretzky.
You know what? If he said, come on up, there's a slight chance I might have.
I've gone into a couple celebrities' hotel rooms because I thought maybe.
maybe if he touches it, I got a story. So fast forward to today. I have never in my life been more disappointed by a fall from grace. Not Tiger Woods, not Michael Jordan when he quit and decided to go play baseball for 3 years. Maybe Aaron Hernandez, but I wasn't an Aaron Hernandez fan. I mean, let's just go through the Rolodex.
How would you describe the fall from grace? Just the incident? Like, what's going on?
It's a great question. There's been rumors up here for quite some time that Wayne has been friends with Donald Trump back in 2016, right? Everybody just ignored it because he's Wayne Gretzky. There's streets named after him. He's royalty. He was royalty. And it was a picture of him at Mar-a-Lago with a thumbs up several months ago where he's partying with Donald Trump. Donald Trump's getting ready to make a run. He's an adjudicated rapist. Canadians fucking hate Donald Trump. Like, we loved Wayne Gretzky, but we really, really, really hate Donald Trump. Like 92% of us, if the guy disappeared forever, we'd be cheering in the streets. So when you see a Canadian god, a guy who put Canada on the map, a guy who popularized hockey, a guy who walked into Los Angeles and became part of Magic Johnson's scene, a guy who, like, it's incredible when you're a kid from Alberta and you see this guy go down to LA and he's like the talk of the town. You're like, oh my God, he put us on the map. When you see that guy cavorting with a convicted criminal, a rapist, quite possibly a pedophile, a thief, a liar, just an outright piece of shit. And you see Wayne hanging out with him day after day, going to the inauguration, big smiles on his face. You want to know why, right? So there's that part of it. But the other part that's really fucking wild to me is not only has he not said anything, like, just say something, like, come out and say something. Come out and say something. What he has done is he's tagged in Bobby Orr to put out an email and a note to talk about how Wayne Gretzky's a proud Canadian and us asking questions about his affiliation with the world's worst piece of shit and why he says he likes the world's worst piece of shit, why we have a problem with it, and then has his wife put that letter out on social media and say something for Wayne. So he's still not saying
he should never be allowed to go out in public and not be asked, or be on an interview and not be asked. Wayne Gretzky has to answer for himself, and that's what a man would do. But I'll tell you what's
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Can you separate, like, do you know people that you like? Do you respect anybody that likes Donald Trump or that knows Donald Trump?
I have generally the quick answer is no, but I think that I live in a country and in a world where I'm going to disagree vehemently with people, and I'm going to be around people who are fascist and don't even know it. And, they're going to need to fix my engine or change my oil, or, I'm making a deal with them somehow or some way. And so, it's very, very hard. But I mean, I would say the thing, hearing you talk about your reverence for Wayne Gretzky and how hard it is to see this, the thing that's way sadder than that, way harder than that, is not seeing your heroes, or maybe they are your heroes, but seeing your best friends, your parents, people that you work with, people that you trust, people who thought you cared about you. I mean, I shared this yesterday on social media. The hardest thing sometimes isn't the damage and pain being caused, but watching so many people support it. And what's harder than watching your heroes support it or not say anything, at worst be complicit, is seeing your loved ones. That's so hard for Americans and anyone who has lost family members over this, has spoken to their family member for years over, because the man renews his awful reasons to disdain him every day. It's not like you can ever let it go, because every day he shows up and insults someone and lies about something and does something terrible. And every day your friends and coworkers and neighbors and community members go right along with it, look the other way, lie for him. And it starts to make you think that they're bad people, because Donald Trump is so cruel and mean to the most vulnerable people. How can you support that? I wouldn't support a principal, a mayor, or any of my loved ones who treated people that way ever. That would be a wrap, and it has been.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle a lot of people have, is you're associating, the deified version of Wayne Gretzky with, again, one of the worst people in the world. And when you equate, and it's funny because I said this a while ago, kind of the same thing you just said, was that I have no respect for anybody that likes that man. I just assume that person's an idiot. If you love Donald Trump, if you think he's a good president, or if you think he's a good person, I think you're dumb, or I think you're
dozens of women accuse him of sexual harassment or an assault over the years. Dozens. When I think I told you this, but I was on The Apprentice in 2004, and they asked us if we wanted to meet him, and I said no, because in 2004, long before he ran for president, in 2004, I knew he was a terrible person to women. He had been on the Howard Stern show. He had these beauty pageants. He had been divorced at least twice, I think, at that point. He had cheated on both his wives. Yeah. It was, he was a tabloid. If you were a New Yorker, much less an American, you knew this guy garnered attention by doing bad things and treating people poorly. That was in 2004, Dean.
Long time ago.
We knew then. I hated him then. I had the opportunity to meet him then, and I said no. I said, does he want to meet us? And the producer said, not necessarily. I said, then I'm good. And you know what I then did? I went on stage on NBC, and I made fun of his people on his show. His old man, right-hand man, was on the show. He's like 90 years old, or at least he looked that way, was in the audience. And he's a legend. If you'd watched The Apprentice those first few seasons, you knew who this guy was. His right-hand man was a guy named George, this old guy named George. And I said, oh my gosh, George is in the audience. George, you're a veteran, right? And he said, yes, I am. And I said, Confederate or Union? He's old, very old. And then on the show, the edit, it cuts to one of the Apprentice people going, oh my God, the comedian Pete Dominick is making fun of Trump's guy. We're in trouble. That's what I did. I knew it would make the edit. I wanted to ping Donald Trump. I didn't like him. It was NBC was the show I was on, not Donald Trump's show. It was an NBC show. So I went on it, and I took you know, it made me famous for a couple days, and then
yeah,
training.
but yeah, but you speak your mind, and I think that that's the problem that a lot of people have is that Wayne Gretzky is not speaking his mind, and if he isn't speaking his mind, then that must be his mind for a lot of different people that people that won't take a stand and people that are okay.
Silence is far worse. I mean, the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. If you see someone attacking somebody and you just sit there, you might as well be attacking them. That's how I see it. It might be harsh, but if it's treatment, it's not dangerous. You don't have to put yourself in harm's way. But I mean, like, if you see people, I can't tell you how many times I saw like a woman being catcalled on the street by some dirtbag leering out of his truck, and then I would go up to that guy's truck and I would catcall him. I mean, one time this guy's like leaning out of his truck. He's like, "Hey, mommy, why don't you bring that sweet ass over there?" And I walked up to the truck and I go, "Why don't you bring that sweet ass down here?" And he was, appalled. And the woman was like, I ended up marrying her. No, I mean, like, woman, I don't think it's anything. But, Dr. King said, in the end, we were remembered not for the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. The ultimate tragedy is not oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. If Wayne Gretzky is one of the good people, then he cannot be silent.
And I think that's the problem that most people have, even in his own community, like the hometown of Edmonton. There's a petition going around to rename streets that are named after him. Wow. Take his name off of parks.
Wow, yeah. Wow, yeah. He's in trouble because he can't go out in public without being asked. Most of the places he will go will probably be on hockey shows, hockey-related events, and the people there won't feel responsible for asking him the question. But he's going to go somewhere, and some journalist or some Canadian is going to say, put him in. He's going to cower. He's going to be silent, or he could put out a statement right now and he would become a hero to Canadians. That's the craziest thing. You're going down with the worst guy in the world because of what? You're afraid that if you go against him, he's going to tarnish you? Oh, hell no. If Wayne Gretzky speaks out about Donald Trump, he will be hated by Trump people, and he should wear their hatred the way he wears anything else that he's proud of. And he will be loved by far more people, the good people that Dr. King talked about.
I think he's got to decide, to your point, that's a great point. I think he's got to decide what's more important to his legacy, right? And I think that, Wayne is notoriously quiet. Wayne does not like fights. Wayne does not engage. Like, he and his wife got pinched for gambling with a bookie, if you remember that, several years ago. Rick Tocchet, a few other people in New York. Rick Tocchet actually got charged. He's now the coach of the Vancouver Canucks. They've outrun that. He didn't say anything. His wife said something. Tocchet said something. He was dead silent the entire time and managed to walk through it, coached during the Olympics. And so I think it's hope that happens. But to your point, he, for a guy whose reputation is more important to him than anything, the fact that A, he continues to engage with Trump is unbelievable to me. And B, the fact that he's not coming out really strong for decency, really strong for Canada in the face of this 51st state bullshit. The fact that he doesn't seem to care enough about this country just to say something about this country. That, to your point, and to Dr. King's point, that's not just an admission of guilt. That's him saying, you know what? I am firmly on Team Trump, so I don't give a fuck about anything else at this point. And I think that's the disconcerting thing for a lot of Canadians is that, he's worn the maple leaf with pride. He's been ours for 62 years, the greatest hockey player to ever put him on. And now he's like, you know what? I'm just going to turn my back on you guys, because that's not just the impression that his actions get, the whole "if you permit it, you promote it" thing. I mean, it's what he's doing.
It would seem, and maybe this.
And we're not idiots either, Pete. Like, we get what the silence means.
I would hope so. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that way about Canadians, but to me, maybe this is too hyperbolic. I don't think it is. The way I've been, hearing Canadian leaders and folks like you talking, if your country is under attack and you choose to side with the attacker, who are you? Like, what are you? I mean, the pain and suffering that Canadians are going to go through economically, and could it become a violent military conflict? Geez, I never thought it. I still don't think that right now. But the way that this guy talks and the way he's referring to Canada, a way that he seemingly wants to chomp up land as part of his legacy, I would be worried. You don't take him at what he says, you take him at what he does. And what he's doing is potentially punishing people economically. There's going to be real pain. And maybe, like often, he's a coward and it's all going to be a threat because there's going to be pain in America as well. But I mean, your country is under attack. So choose sides. And it seems like most Canadians have. And it's Canada.
Yeah, most of us have, but some of us haven't, like Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky still hasn't not on each other's side. And you bring up a great point. Like, he's not talking about a partnership with Canada. He's calling the governor, the prime minister, the governor. He said he's going to have Canada. He's going to take it by economic force or otherwise.
About your country and what it has and what it does and what it's doing. Every day he's lying on your country. It is the most disdainful, disrespectful, dangerous, and awful thing. And any Canadian who doesn't correct the record, conservative Canadian leaders, you told me, and I've been doing the research, they are outspoken against these lies. We already talked about this. You have to speak out against the lies. Your country is being rhetorically destroyed to an American public by saying that you're letting fentanyl in, that you're not doing anything about it, that you won't let our banks operate there. Lies, blatant, not white lies, not omissions, lies. And any Canadian who doesn't push back against the lies, much less stand up against this, what are you? What?
Complicit. You're complicit, to your point, right? And that is the entire point. And you've encapsulated it and summarized it really, really well. Our country is under attack by Donald Trump. One of Donald Trump's best friends, Wayne Gretzky, and I quote, and I'm not kidding you, has said, "I love Canada. It's my home." Bobby Orr, same thing. "I love Canada. It's my home." Meanwhile, they promote him, hang out with him, get pictures taken with him, and haven't said a word about the 51st state stuff. Haven't spoken up for Canada's sovereignty. Not a word about our national security. They haven't pushed back against this man who is vilifying us, who is lying about us, who is threatening our national security and sovereignty on a daily fucking basis, to your point. And they say they love this country. I mean, words and works being very, very fucking different, right? Because you can say anything, but he's not even doing that, right? It's the works. That's where you see the cost of the individual soul. That's where you actually see what the person's worth. And there are no works to suggest that Wayne Gretzky or Bobby Orr really give a shit about this country.
Sometimes wealth and fame will do that to you. You forget who you are. You forget where you came from. You forget how you got there. It was Canadians as to how they got there. So it's a disgrace. It's a pure disgrace. I don't like to appeal to traditional gender roles because I think it's silly. But if you're a man, if you're a tough traditional man, and you're letting this weak American demagogue lie about your country, then you're not much of a man. If you're letting your friends down and your countrymen down, you're not much of a man in my mind. I mean, it's not masculine. You're not tough. You're weak. Nothing could be weaker in my eyes. That's how I measure strength. It's, again, women are even stronger this way, rhetorically speaking out. But a man who doesn't speak out, it's like, it's funny because I get in these arguments with the MAGA people and I love it. And this has been the case my whole life. I'm a small guy. I can't and don't fight. I make friends with big people, so I don't have to. But I've been beat up a few times for running my mouth. 3 times, as a matter of fact. Not recently, but almost. And what happens now on Facebook is I dice and shred these people to pieces. And it's more humiliating for them because they're writing under their own name in their own town as opposed to some anonymous person on Twitter who still, can feel emasculated. But, they're often anonymous. Here it's their name and their town, and they have me just destroying them. And they now 3 times in the last week, they've told me to come to their house and fight me. And it's the refuge of dumb people. I'm smart. I'm funny. I'm cutting. You're not. So don't tangle. Don't start a fight you can't finish. And I'm always cool and respectful. These are my neighbors. But as soon as they come for me, I finish them. And if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. But they always end up, one guy gave me his address. He's like, "Come on over." I'm like, "I'm watching the Oscars with my family. I don't have time to fight a fascist right now. But if you'd like to make an appointment later this week, I'd be happy to buy you coffee and talk." And then another guy threatened me, and I looked at his profile picture, and I go, listen, man, it looks like you haven't done cardio in 37 years. So, I don't think you want to get, he said, get in the ring. He goes, I'll sign a waiver. Let's get in the ring.
Oh, he wanted to actually get in a
man,
ring, strap on some gloves and maybe one of those safety
like,
helmets.
I'm an athlete and I'm small and I'm way faster than you. So I won't let you near me and you'll die of a heart attack because you don't do cardio and I do. So if you got a hold of me, you'd beat the shit out of me. But the point I'm trying to make is dumb people, dumb men always challenge you to a physical fight. And I'll say to them, like, you could beat me up. So I'm not going to fight you. But if you'd like to continue arguing here, I'd love to continue embarrassing you. But I'm not going to fight you.
Yeah.
I don't fight. I'm not a violent person. But if you say whatever you're saying, I'll have something to say back. I've been doing it my whole life, my whole career. I live to fight bullies rhetorically. And if they want to physically fight, at this point, to be honest with you, Dean, I was at a bar the other day and I heard this guy talking about Ukraine. And if not for my friend there, I think I probably would have fought that guy because I was pretty sauced up and I was, my judgment was impaired. And I looked.
Yeah. You're a little taller. You had a couple drinks in you. You get a little taller.
Fight someone who I think I can take. During COVID, this guy wasn't wearing a mask at a deli, and I didn't really care about such things. I didn't think I was going to get COVID at a deli, standing behind some guy. But some older woman asked this guy, told us, reprimanded this guy to put on a mask, and he disrespected. He insulted her, and I stepped up and told him to stop, and he threatened me, and I go. I sized him up and he was short and fat. So I knew I could take him. And then I decided to talk back. And what I said was, he said something. He's like, let's take it outside. I go, no, let's take it inside right now where all the cameras are. I go, I dare you to punch me. Punch me right now. I won't try to stop. Maybe you'll knock me out. Either way, I'm driving home in your truck. I'll own everything you have because it's assault and I will sue you. Go ahead, stupid. Punch me, you dummy, over a mask. I mean, so dude, I could be that guy.
But I love those guys. I love them. And you know what? You could probably draw a straight line from those morons that don't have the ability to converse in a heated moment. And so they kind of panic and they're like, let's fight. You can literally transpose that over to guys like Wayne Gretzky, who, if you know anything about hockey players, the least educated of every single professional athlete on the planet. No, it's true. It's 100%
I would put a Canadian
true.
hockey player's literacy up against American or another American athletes because of your education system. But the other,
our education system's good. But here's what happens: is they get these hockey players when they're in their 9th grade. They send them somewhere to go play semi-pro, and then they never really finish school. I can't remember what the stat was. It was like it's only 58% of NHLers graduated high school. Like this was an unbelievable stat. It was a number of years ago. It could be different now. But I'm telling you, it's literally people talk about pandemics. I think the biggest issue that we have now is we literally live in the pandemic of stupid. You want to fix what Trump is? You want to fix what ails the rest of the world? Educate people. Fix your education system.
They're trying to take control of our education system to make sure that we don't learn things that might counter their beliefs. I mean, even without that, you can call the public education however you want. The bottom line is it trained us to be capitalists. It trains us to work hard, to create shit, to make money for the state. I never really bought that. I was always laughing all the way through school. I was like, I don't need this. This is algebra. I'm going to be a comedian. I definitely don't need this. I had the great opportunity 10 years after I graduated high school and I was a headlining stand-up comedian in my hometown. I was doing a gig and my math teacher was in the audience. And I told him, I told you. I've never, since I left your class.
Told you I didn't need any
letters and numbers.
I told you.
I've never needed a letter near a number. I mean, it's really preposterous. The other problem that I'm having right now as we speak is I'm very tough as we speak because I'm on season 3 of Amazon's Prime Reacher. And when I watch Reacher, it makes me want to kick ass because he's everything I want to be and will never be. Yeah. I'm a tiny man. I've been in a few fights. I've been in 3 fights, Dean. In all 3 fights, 3 punches were thrown. None by me. One time I got hit by a guy.
I don't know if you call those fights though, Pete. I really don't. Getting hit like 3 times. I think you just got punched 3 times. You can call them fights.
Fair enough.
But I don't think they
fair enough. But I started them with my mouth and they finished them. But one time I got hit in the face and the guy hit me and my friend behind me with the same punch. He should be given an award. Oh, two guys, one punch. That's a reacher move if I haven't seen one. He was like 4'2", too. My fault.
Was he really? By the way, I can't watch Reacher with my girlfriend because she won't turn it off. Like, that's the problem that I have with Reacher, is that when he takes his shirt off, I have to leave the room. I don't look like that.
I watch it alone, like everything else.
Pete Dominick, Stand Up, the podcast. It is a very, very good one, and you should follow him on social media. Where can people get a hold of you, Pete, and who's coming up on your podcast? I know you just posted one this morning. If I'm not mistaken.
I actually had the rare no guest show. Every day I do a news recap. So I didn't have a guest. I had to cancel my guest yesterday. But every day I got the smartest people in the country. Today I've got, tomorrow, Spencer Ackerman, I think, is going to be my guest. I talked to him today. I'll probably post that for tomorrow. He's one of the best foreign policy journalists in America. Really, really important stuff that he's reporting on. I've talked to people about economics. Obviously, that's a huge issue right now. Foreign policy is a huge issue. Public health is something that I've covered my entire career. I think I talked to some of the most credible public health experts in the country right now. We're having a measles outbreak because of our leadership, because we, have.
Dude, measles are just called freedom sores now.
I haven't heard that. That's great. Yeah. So.
Yeah, RFK is telling everybody, he's like, hey, some kids are dying of measles in Texas. He goes, let's call them freedom sores,
everybody
please.
Needs to take cod liver oil. What? It's measles, bro. Just the vaccine will do. Thank you. Yeah, so standupwithpete.com. My podcast is daily, sometimes even on the weekends. I love my job. I love working. I love talking to smart people, so I do it every day. And so I'd love to have more Canadians. I'd love the perspective. I've got a lot of Canadians listening because SiriusXM was Canadian. A lot of those guys have stayed with me, but I'm getting a lot of really interesting sources and details from Canadians, like pictures of your shelves being emptied of American products. I think that kind of thing is important to share with Americans.
Yeah, dude, we pulled $240 million worth of your booze off of our shelves across the country yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing all of it. Yeah. No. The tariffs are going to be good. The biting package that we have back. So I think we've canceled. I think it was like 62% of Canadians canceled their U.S. vacations this year. It's already caused something like $2.1 billion in losses in the travel industry in the United States, decimating Florida to some extent. Yeah, we're all in, dude. We're all in for Canada. I do have to thank Trump a little bit because he brought us together. Wayne Gretzky's bringing us together too a little bit. Just too bad.
Couldn't have predicted when we were growing up. That's
right. I know. Pete, thanks
always
for doing
happy
this,
to do it, buddy. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate your perspective. Have a great day,
Thanks,
pal.
sir.
I'll talk to you soon. There you go. There's Wayne Gretzky. He's the Wayne Gretzky of stand-up. I love Pete. Follow him on social media, Pete Dominick, Dominick. Stand Up with Pete Dominick is his website. If you go to Stand Up with Pete, you can go to his website. He's on Lisbon. Which is Libsyn, Libsyn. If you go to Libsyn, you can check. That's what he does. You can check him out online as well. You can also get him wherever you get your fine podcasts, Apple, Spotify, etc. But go to his website and you can check him out. Super, super smart dude. And he's got a heart too, which is incredible. I love that about people like him. He's entertaining. He's got a heart. He still works hard. And he feels like he's got a bigger responsibility. I think most of us do in this space, especially now. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, everybody, for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. Don't forget, you can get everything to do on YouTube, Crier Media on YouTube, the Dean Blundell Show on YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast, Dean Blundell Show on podcasts, specifically Apple and Spotify. Please go there and check that out. Give us a nice rating. We'd appreciate that. And special thank you to my friends at Field Trip Health, fieldtriphealth.ca. Go there today, specifically if you're struggling with any kind of addictive issue, OCD, chronic pain, but more importantly, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, and anxiety. Tailor-making your treatment plan is one of the most important things today. And with the advancement of psychedelics, some of the breakthroughs in psychedelics, which, listen, I'm a fan, and I'm not a fan in terms of treating it in a recreational capacity. I'm a fan of the medically supervised treatment facilities that Field Trip has. You sit in a 0G chair, you do a little ketamine, you put the glasses on, and you actually do therapy for 2 hours, literally unwrapping trauma. And the ketamine pulls you out of that negative state, pulls you out of that negative thought process, and it allows you to look at yourself like you're just everybody else with zero fear. It's been difficult for a lot of different people, specifically that are treatment resistant, meaning lots of SSRIs. You get 20% relief, 30% relief. Ketamine assisted psychotherapy is proving out to have 70 to 80% response rates in individuals, sometimes within hours. So if you're in Canada, and even if you can't get to a clinic, go to fieldtriphealth.ca. They've got an at-home therapy program as well. Book your appointment. Tell them I said hi. Go and talk to a nurse practitioner. It's absolutely free, and it is an incredible resource for anybody, and I mean anybody, who wants to get on top of their mental health and put PTSD, anxiety, depression, treatment-resistant psychopathies behind them, and to experience that lift, that joy, to remove that cloud of anger, remove that cloud of negativity so you can have joy in your life again. It's worked for me. It has worked for dozens of my friends, and it's worked for thousands of Canadians. Please go to fieldtriphealth.ca and get better faster. That's what we do. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Rate, subscribe, review anywhere you can. See you tomorrow. Bye.